Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host, Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be having a very interesting conversation with Mike Butler. So, Mike's interest in technology started when he was only 4 years old, and as time passed by, he developed a passion for it and wanted to learn how it could be used for business and doing good. So, Mike has spent last 16 years working at the First Merchants Bank, an Indiana-based financial holding company. First Merchant Bank is among one of the top 100 banks in USA. This experience has given Mike the first-hand knowledge of the necessary tools and data needed for a hyper-growth company. In 2003, he started technology as a technology intern in project management. That experience helped him understand the value chain in technology and its ability to shape the business. In 2014, he was promoted to CTO, and it shifted his focus to strategic leadership and working with other technologists to build the next generation of technology for business. In January 2019, First Merchant Bank was ranked number 2 on America's Best Bank list, compiled by Forbes, up from number 4 ranking in 2018. First Merchant Bank was listed as one of the best places to work in Indiana by Indiana Chamber of Commerce in 2018 for major companies with 1,000 or more employees. As of July 2020, total asset size of First Merchant Bank Corporation is $13.8 billion. Mike's interests are in leading people to engage problems and design innovative solutions. His curiosity has led him to research cloud architecture, product design, leadership, psychology, machine learning extensively. Mike is specifically interested in using data to augment products and create new services. Wow, welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Manuj.
Awesome. So, in a long time now, we've not had a guest with the technology background, so we can geek out a little bit because I come from technology background. So let's start there. At 4 years old, what the heck were you doing at 4 years old with technology?
Well, okay, so I grew up in the 80s, and so one of the things what's a little bit unique for me is that my dad worked at Ball State. And he's a cognitive psychologist, and he was studying human factors, so how people interact with machines. And he was really interested in specific like labs and setting up infrastructure and things like that. And so one of the things that I got exposure to that a lot of other kids my age wouldn't have gotten exposure to is that my dad is building these labs. So I'm getting access, in 1984, 5 to Franklin's, to Apple IIs, to Apple II Pluses, all kinds of technology and infrastructure that most people didn't have access to. And so I was, now some of that were experiments that my dad was running, and we were, my siblings and I, we were part of those experiments. But we got access to all this technology really early because of our relationship with the university and then what my dad was doing. And so even though it was a typical kind of like Midwestern childhood, that I would say my brothers and my sister and I, we were more akin to probably kids these days. We were used to computers being in the household from pretty much when we were born. My dad has a picture of me at 2 years old typing on an Apple II, where he had written a typing program for us to learn how to type. So, and I'm not a faster typer because of that. I have challenged that. So.
That's great. That's awesome. Now I have 2 young kids of my own, and they do nothing else but break my stuff, my technology. So do you recall any incidents where you actually caused any trouble with your dad?
Yeah. Well, and many times actually. I used to. So I've written I learned to write some programs, but usually in BASIC. When I was around 7, my dad was teaching us, and I broke many of his computers. Not permanently; they were always recoverable. But several times. I was interested in electricity, so at one point I was pretty young. I thought I could, take something from the electrical outlet and plug it into the computer and make it faster. And I did that, and I did catch some stuff on fire at one point. So.
All right. Okay. So that's not as drastic as my kids, thankfully. All right. So. And, you have been really successful at building these amazing companies, amazing teams. How did that come about? One of the superpowers I know that you have is being a super connector, and you connect well with people. How was that experience? How did you pick up that skill?
Ooh, that's a good nature nurture one. So I've always liked technology, but I've always liked people. So actually, I actually went to school and I was going to be a programmer. I was going to be a computer scientist, and I would say I am one now. But the problem I ran into in school was, I remember having a conversation. I was in an assembler course, and I remember talking to my professor, and I said, "Hey, I don't understand why we're doing this program. Like, who would we talk to? And what value are we trying to create? Like, it's almost like, an actor needs motivation. That's how I felt." And I remember he told me, he goes, "Who cares? Just build it." It was like, I remember I had this moment where I was like, oh man, I'm not going to really talk to people that much. And this is, this is back a while ago. And today developers do get to talk more and reach out. And so what I started to explore was like, well, I really want to do something else. Like, I want to work with people, but I have to work with technology. Like, how could I not work with technology? And so I explored different programs. I ended up finding an information systems and analytics program that I went through, and got all those experiences. Got to go deep on database infrastructure and stuff like that. And then I also got to go through. It was a consulting program actually. We got to go through and we reached out into the community, and we would go do projects in the community and help different businesses with different projects. I would say the drive to work with people, I've always had that, and that drive to work with technology. I think it's taken some time to hone how you work with people, how you give up something of yourself to empower them, let them make decisions, let them take on challenges and grow. But a lot of that was just through different connections and watching leaders that I was really impressed with, and just watching them grow people and do things and saying, man, I want to do things like that. I don't want to just build technology. I want to help drive it forward. I want to help innovate. I want to help create. So it's a little bit of nature and a little bit of nurture at the same time. But I've always had that drive, and I really do enjoy working with people. I actually consider it one of my primary purposes as a leader.
That's great. And being in engineering school and business school and going through all this education, I feel that element is missing somehow, as in a formal study. We tend to really focus on just if we are learning technology, like how do machines work.
Yeah.
Forgetting the fact that at the end of the day, it's meant for serving humans, and a human is going to operate it. So obviously, you have learned that lesson well, and you have been very, very successful at that. But what will you advise to these educational institutions as the world is changing? What can they do to teach more people about what you know?
That's a good question.
How to link technology and understand humans and sort of use it in the service of humanity.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, like you just said it, like that was really good. I think we forget when we're going through courses and things like that, and we stay heads down, and we have to write this routine, or we have to write this program, we have to do whatever it is, and we actually forget, like, what is the purpose for it? Like, why are we doing this? I was talking to my dad once about when he got into human factors analysis. And we were talking about, he said one of his professors came in once, and he was teaching about how do you write a test? How do you write a test, in software? How do you write it for people? And they had written a program, it was on an old Apple II, and this is an old story, but it was you could either hit Y for yes or N for no. It was just a yes, no, true, false kind of test. And he said, the guy came in there, and my dad gave him the instructions, said, okay, sit down and do it. And he just sat there and just started mashing the keypad. And my dad's like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. And he said, I'm a person. I'm just going to do whatever I want. So if you don't want me to do that, you're going to have to build things around it, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we miss when we're building some of this technology in school and stuff. That story sticks with me. And my dad told me that, and I all through college, many times I've gone through college. It's that story stuck with me, because I really do believe that's the nature of people. Like, you can tell us don't do something, and it's that that button that says don't push me. Everybody's going to push that button at some point. Yeah. So I think what in academia, what would be helpful is as they teach these students, and I sit on a few advisory groups, and we talk about this as we teach these students. How do we make sure that their skill stays relevant and that they stay connected to industry? And because you don't want to teach them skills that have fallen to the wayside or are no longer useful, and you also don't want to you know, not teach them that a lot of what they're doing, if they're a technologist, you are someone who's going to work with people. You might not do it directly, but you're going to build technology that's going to work with people. So you have to build good interactions.
That's awesome. And, for those of us who are already in the workforce, I want to make sure that we don't leave them aside. So how can we nurture these qualities in them? If we are already in the workforce, we are driven, we are, doing good things, building technology, whatever we are doing, but forgetting the human side of it.
So I study a lot. I'm writing a paper right now, actually, on cognitive bias in decision making, like when you're working on projects and things like that. And I think one of the things that can help us as people is to actually just be aware of our biases and how we think about the world. Like if you're kicking off a project, ask for people's opinion. Like say, do you think this is a good idea? And if you get no's, don't discount them. That's overconfidence bias. You need to think about it. And I think the more we can try to engage people and ask them questions, let them give feedback, and then really think about, okay, is this the right thing to do? And there's tons of other things we can do, but in general, like that's the core to me. Get feedback, figure out if it's the right thing to do, and then make a decision and move a direction. And I think that's like in industry, that's what I watch us sometimes struggle with is, let's say you've had a few successes and you're like, I got the formula. This is just it. This is just going to work. I don't need to ask people I don't need an opinion anymore. I think, and you and I've talked about that. You know that's incredibly important, is to understand what are you trying to accomplish, and make sure you get feedback from people on how you're going to try to accomplish it. So, and I think too, us in industry, we need to just stay open-minded and just keep learning. New techniques are coming out. The pandemic has created new opportunities that we need to rethink how certain technologies work. I think just staying open-minded and doing some of those things that we can just do some really cool stuff.
That's amazing. And now, one of the things that I want to bring up, and this is a little bit personal, I know, was your graduate study in predictive analytics in 2014. Yeah. So, do you want to share a little bit about that story? How did you get in there, and what was that?
Yeah. So it's 2014, and I'd been looking for. So I had an MBA, and I was looking for another program. And so Northwestern has a great predictive analytics program, a lot of great professors up there. And so I got into that program, I took probably a couple classes. And then my sister got sick. She got sarcoma, which is an incredibly rare form of cancer. So I'm in a data analytics program. My sister was actually getting ready to apply for a doctoral program in dietetics and nutrition sciences. And so one of the things she and I would do is we would actually talk about data. I remember we had a long conversation talking about p-values, and I remember she and I were talking, we were like, this is only our family that would be sitting here. She has a terminal illness, and one of the last conversations she and I get to have are about p-values and how p-values work, in statistics. And so I did about half the curriculum. She passed away, and I decided we set up a foundation in her name at Ball State. And during that time, I kind of lost the energy, so I didn't finish the program. When you go through this actually taught me some lessons. And I loved my sister. I mean, she was incredibly bright, and but it did teach me a lesson. There are events that you go through in your life that change your perspective. And at that point, my perspective shifted, and I felt like it was better if I could do something that would remember her than go work on education at the time. So we created a foundation. I actually recruited some people, and we wrote an auction platform, and we ran some events and raised quite a bit of money, and then put that into the scholarship account that we created for her. But those are also some of the guys that we've written other software for, for charities and done stuff like that. So it was an interesting lesson. It was a pretty sad point in my life, but I have, after I came out of that, and we did some of that, I started to explore again, like, okay, I do want to do more with education. I love learning. What can I do? And so I'm currently at Purdue working on a doctorate. It's going to take me a long time, but I'm working on it.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I mean, for what it's worth, I will say I will make an observation that I know it was a sad experience. I empathize, but I think the way that you handle it, you have brought in some immortality to her, memories by creating this foundation.
Oh yeah.
And data is so important, as we know. We're going through this, pandemic situation. If you don't track data, there's not going to be any way to tackle this problem, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and so one of the things she and I talked about, you'd probably find this in. So we were talking about genomic studies and how much data do you need before they'll really be effective for cancer treatments? Because you have so many different gene combinations in your body. At what point will we have enough data? And so one of the things she and I concluded with sarcoma is there's just so few cases a year. There's just never really going to be enough data. You'd have to go out, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, and hopefully they just solve it. No one ever gets it again. But it was data becomes so important, and the collection of that data, because you don't want to lose some of this. So one of the things she did towards the end of her life is she did her genetic material was donated so that they could study it. So
okay, yeah, there you go. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit now. You've gone through a huge success in your career, starting as an intern, rising to the ranks of CTO. What do you think are the qualities of a good leader? How, like, people struggle, especially young people these days, how do they get to the next level? What kind of advice you can give them?
So that's a great question. I don't think you should ever discount just hard work. I think that's one that people, a lot of people are looking for a shortcut. And the reality is it is about hard work. I remember I used to have a principle, and I don't think I would apply it today, but if I worked twice as much as everyone else, I would, in 1 year, I would have the equivalent of 2 years experience, 3 years of experience. And that's probably not exactly true. But I don't think you can discount hard work. The other thing that I really encourage leaders to do is find a purpose, find the things that drive you, and then try to apply that to your leadership philosophy. Yeah. So if you're, one of my favorite adages is teach a man to fish. I mean, I love that.
Yeah.
I that's just my favorite thing to tell people. A lot of people know it at work. But if you think about that, so that's part of my leadership philosophy is I will take time out of my day to teach. Doesn't matter where you are on the totem pole. I'll take time out of my day. If there's something I can teach you and it'll help you get better, it'll help me become a better leader because I learned how to interact with one more person. Yeah. I'll do it. And so I think when you find that purpose as a leader and you can find a way that that's going to help you, drive your mission of who you're going to be. I think a lot of things start to fall in line at that point. It helps you be more authentic. Yeah. If you've heard about authentic leadership, it helps you be more of a servant in a lot of ways, because then you're willing to help people and do things. You're worried less about your ego and where you are on the rank. So I just think driving that purpose, and I think you can if you think purpose in terms of, you and I've talked a little bit about when you think about in business, when you start a business, you have to have purpose. You can't just not know your customer. You can't just say, I'm going to build this app and everybody's going to love it and not really know what you're building. Like, it's the same thing as a leader. If you want to develop your leadership capabilities and you do want to grow in that direction, you can also grow technically, which I like doing too. You have to define that purpose as a leader to really become authentic.
That's great. And so one of the things that you mentioned, it seems like the theme is that you really need to understand yourself and sort of contain your ego. And one interesting thing I observed in the corporate world is, as you get these titles, especially with the C title that starts with a C, which is chief of something or chief or whatever, that has a magical effect on a person. The person actually changes from one day to another based on the title they have been given. Have you observed that?
I've seen some of that. I've seen people that it doesn't change them as much. I think too. I think what happens is they take that role. I think their mission shifts a little bit. They go from maybe implementing they go from being kind of tactical to having to be more strategic. And I think I have seen shifts when I've seen others promote or take on those roles where they have to think a little bit differently. And I think we see that that externalizes as different behaviors and things like that. I've also seen, so our CISO and I work together. He actually started, I think, a couple years after me, but he started, as a part-time or an intern or something like that too. And so there's two CXOs at our company that used to be like, below the current staff level. I don't even think we have interns of like that anymore. And so I've noticed like his value system has stayed the same though. He's still about integrity and things like that. But I have friends in other industries, and I've watched them, and as they've taken their shot and they're like, I'm going to go change everything tomorrow. And it's like, the problem is when you become a C, when you get into that C chair, your ability to actually change something that day is hard. It's really hard.
That's great. And so in order to change things or get things done or achieve big goals, obviously you need to have a team. You cannot do everything by yourself, but then you need to get their buy-in, whether they like the proposal or not, or whether their values are aligned or not. So how do you balance all that? Like, how do you get them motivated, get their buy-in, get their concerns addressed, and get them to actually do something which is amazing for other people?
So I have this term that I found in I'm not going to give the right credit, but there's a concept called a superordinate goal. So goal of goals is what it's called. And what I've found is when you can align people on a mission. So I'll give you an example. When COVID hit and we had to figure out how to get people home. I mean, it was the bank. We started down this path of we have to figure out a way to get people out of the office, and we've never done this at this scale. A bunch of us came together, and it didn't even matter who the leader was at that point. It was just like, we have got to figure this out. We sat down and everybody just started they had ideas, and we'd create tasks and we'd create plans, and we'd go and we'd go and we'd go. And what we realized is that it worked so well because the mission was the same at the top of the house. And, for us, how do we get people home? Because that was the model. Yeah. Now that's a pretty extreme one. I mean, if it takes a global pandemic every time to get us down the same path, that would be bad. But what we found was that if we can align each other, and if we can so I really think it's important to have conversations around, do we have the same goals? And the reality is you're not always going to. Maybe you run the same project and you're both after a different result. But ultimately, can you get to a point where you understand what your superordinate goal is? And what I found is when we can rally the team around a symbol or something like that, or a goal at that level, that you really get some incredible performance. And that's when I think people they'll deliver those amazing products and those amazing things that you can't figure out how they found the time or the energy to stay up one more night and try to just knock this out, kinds of things. Yeah. And so when I work with teams, I really focus on trying to find that superordinate goal or create it when I have to create it. So it's there's studies you've read and you watch these companies. I'm sure you've been a part of startups that had that goal, and probably startups that didn't have that goal.
That's great. And so a few of our viewers are chiming in here. Todd is saying definitely hard work pays. That's so true. And if anybody is listening or watching, do jump in. We'd like to get more questions and feedback.
Absolutely.
All right. Now we talked about how the work environment is changing and how you rallied around that. How do you think? What is your foresight telling you how things are going to unfold in terms of banking industry or other industries which are so critical for us to function, and the economy is set up in a certain way? Do you think these situations will change in long term due to the pandemic?
From what I've read, so I've read a little bit. I've listened to a few economists now, because I think that's a big driver, trying to understand what's going to happen in the economy, what's going to happen in the stock market. I've listened to quite a bit of that, and I've also listened to a lot of futurists and where they think the world's going to go. I do think what's happened is we've seen a digital acceleration occur. Industry that I think could still stay pretty brick and mortar and things like that. I think what we've seen is the world say, we need to be able to do this online. We need to be able to do it from home, or we need to be able to do it from our phones. I think we were seeing that, but it was a much slower curve. and that velocity increase. So I think we're seeing a lot of innovation and digitization velocity. In terms of where it goes, that is that's the $1 million question. I think we're going to see a lot more competition come out of this in terms of, I think the fintechs and banking. I think we're going to see the financial technologists, the fintechs. I think we're going to see a lot of new products come out of this in terms of how people want to bank, how they want to interact with their banks. We've already seen quite a few requests to just do more digitally than ever before. And I think what we'll probably see is decreased foot traffic over the years and things like that, just in the industry as a whole. I think other industries we're going to see similar stuff, and then there's industries that will probably be not affected at all in the long run. But they do say, from an economist perspective, I've read anywhere between 10 to 20 years for us to really fully recover from what's happening. And then you ask, what is the new norm? And I don't think anyone really knows right now. And I don't think I do either. I keep trying to guess at it.
Well, all we can do is take decisions based on the information that is available at hand right now.
Right.
So now based on that, obviously nobody can tell the future, but based on that, once again, drawing on your success in a industry that is, I will say, is competitive. Like banking is not that easy in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
So drawing on that experience and understanding what is going on, what will be your advice to people who are maybe looking to start a business or maybe trying to, build a new profession? Because right now it is that situation where even people in existing professions, they are rethinking their lives, rethinking where they want to go. In many cases, businesses have been shut down. They're not viable anymore. So what will be your advice in this case?
Yeah. So, oh man, that's a hard one because we see, see a lot of that. You watch the news and you see
I'm sure you must have seen firsthand, your clients and customers must be going through something similar.
Yeah. And even in the community, just walking around, you see, what's going to happen to the restaurant industry? That would be, I'd love to talk to someone in that industry and just say, where does it go, over the next few years? I do think though, so we were talking about the story with my sister and that was a personal crisis where this is a global one. And I do think that when you have a crisis, there's really two types of people. There's people that they use it as an opportunity to drive them to do something new, and there's people that they fold into it, and they don't know what to do. And so I think there's, for a lot of those entrepreneurs and people that are rethinking their careers and stuff like that, this is a good time to do that. And I absolutely think this is a good time to do it because the world's shifting, right? We were just talking about that. So I think as they start to explore a lot of the great inventions that I think we've seen happen during events like this, during maybe not like this because we haven't seen one of these in a long time, but different things like this. And so I think this will be a driver of a lot of innovation. That's the positive spin on it. Obviously, COVID is scary and there's a lot of negatives. But I do think that when I listen to the entrepreneurs, and if there's one thing I know about entrepreneurs, it's they will have another idea. They will come out of this, and they will have a new idea that's equally as powerful, that's going to make an impact, and it's going to have that purpose. Yeah. So what I've told, and I have some friends that own businesses that are starting to struggle and things like that. My brother owns a small business down in Atlanta, Georgia. And he's having this, he's having the same conversation right now. And he's, we're going to come out of this, and he's looking at ways to do. He's a coach, more digital coaching, more online stuff, things like that. So I think this is, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that's totally true. I think we're going to see a lot of people create new inventions out of what's happening. I also think we're going to see a lot of terrible stuff happen over the next year or two too. But I think the positive spin is, we're going to see entrepreneurs come out of this and do some incredible stuff. I think in terms of people who are in industry that are thinking about a shift, I think you take stock of what your values are and what you want and what your risk tolerance is. I think that's an important one for people, and you decide if you want to go after a startup, you want to go after something that's a little more stable like financial services or grocery or whatever. And make that decision for yourself and try something new. I grew a beard during all this because I'd never grown a beard before. So try something new.
Yeah. I recall last time you didn't have facial hair.
No, I decided to do it before this.
Okay. That's amazing. That's interesting. And you're so right. Like, humans have this superpower to adapt. And as you pointed out, like every crisis is basically a way for the nature to tell us that, hey, you got to pick up a different path here, right?
Right. Can I ask you what's, and I'm just curious, what's your opinion of where do you think some of this goes?
See, all I know is humans have this tendency to remember things, especially the negative experiences. And those negative experiences, they live on for generations. Like when I read history, you can look at some of the major events, like Holocaust and those type of Great Depression. Those type of things, if you hear stories, family histories, you'll see the parents who lived through that era, they actually raise their kids to be prepared for that to happen once again. And so the upbringing is different, the way of thinking is different. You're always a little bit scared, little bit worried. And that translates into human like mass psychology, how things unfold. And now this, I believe, is something that has never happened before, because we have technology that enables us to do things differently. Never before we could, if this happened in even 2000, the whole world would have been shut down because there was no remote access. Like right now, even though some people are suffering, but by and large, the world is going on, and that is because of technology, right?
Agree.
And so now, as more and more people realize that, hey, the way that we have been doing things not necessarily have to be done that way. So I think that will cause like major shifts, and how that will be, like, I can see a few trends already. Like, as you said, restaurants, like there's been reports 85% of the restaurants will close down by the end of the year. Like commercial real estate, I don't see a lot of value of maintaining all these like humongous buildings when nobody's going to show up. Large companies are saying, Twitter said like everybody can work from home. Google said until next year. What's going to happen to all these commercial real estate, right? And then as you see, all these industries are not standalone. They rely, like a lot of industries are tied to these industries. So there's going to be a ripple effect of, when stadiums, theaters, restaurants, there's going to be ripple effect to everything else. And people are afraid to touch each other, go near each other. Like, everything in our world is based on touch. We open the door for others. We use the keypad. Like, all those things are, you can see like people are going to hesitate doing all these things. And now we've been doing like, as you said, voice activation and all that. Like, touchless is going to be the key thing, right? Anything touchless is going to be, I want to use touchless. Where is that? Show me that.
That's a good prediction.
Yeah. And those are the things I think are going to bubble up. And, things like even cash, banking, in my opinion, cards and those type of things are going to be digitized in a way that we don't even have to carry any physical item anymore. And these predictions are just based on what I see, how behavior changes in humans, and what they are able to tolerate more as a result of some experience they went through.
Yeah, I think this event, it'll be interesting to watch the types of behavioral changes that we see, and then how much it accelerates. And you're right, those ripple effects, they do happen. They start in one industry and then they ripple through the others. And there's interesting ones too, like the RV industry right now is exploding. I have a buddy that works at one, and he told me that they're doing 4 times the volume they would have done at any point in time. It doesn't matter what's going on. He just says it's just incredible right now what's happening. But you're right. That's a behavioral shift. People don't want to go stay in hotels and things like that. So they're opting they want to just buy their own traveling hotel and drive it around.
Exactly. So that is adaptability in right in front of our eyes. And And if you look at the history of pandemics, they generally last about 2 to 3 years. And so, it's unfortunate people think that it's all over and they go party and everything. But this is a marathon I think we are on.
I think so too. But I think that I liked your comment on, the technology is enabling this. I think the thing we're seeing is that the technology industry and technologists like you and I, like we've hopefully people agree with me, but I think we've kind of stepped up to it and said, okay, let's figure out a way to make this work. Let's figure out a way to get you home. Let's figure out a way to make it a little easier for, you to have a face-to-face conversation with, a client, a customer, a teammate, whatever. And you're right. If this was 15 years ago, this would be, we'd be in worse shape. It's still bad, but we'd be in worse shape. But I think the technology industry, I've been really impressed with the speed at which the technology industry kind of spun. Like you watch like what Microsoft did with Teams, they accelerated all their pipelines and they added resources into it and said, we got to get this thing moving faster. It's just been really interesting to watch. And I think it's the right response from these industries that can't, directly help with antibody testing or anything like that, but we can create video conferencing or better collaboration tools or, different technologies that our clients can work with. That's what's always excited me about technology is its adaptability and our ability to kind of mold it to respond to what's happening in the world.
And not only that, I think, obviously, innovations are happening, but just imagine that we put like 4 times more demands on technology, right? In a matter of weeks, right? And if you did that on any other industry, like let's say there was a housing shortage or there was a automobile shortage or anything, and say, okay, we need 4 times more houses next week. Like,
right.
there is no way that's going to happen, right? And so if people even look at, electricity, water, all these things need infrastructure. And if technology was not there, then, we'll be in dark ages right now.
Right. Well, look at what happened with the PPE industry. They can't get the material out fast enough. And it's taken, recovered. It's taken months. But like, if that would have happened with like, bandwidth and video conferencing technologies and things like that, like, it'd be a never ending news story.
Exactly. And nobody will be able to read them because the internet will be so slow. All right, that's a great way to end the conversation. Thank you so much for being with us, and what a fun and lively conversation. And I got to geek out on technology stuff. Now, before I let you go, can you help us? Can you help people understand how they can reach out to you, how they can connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach out to me. Everything else I get overwhelmed with. So find me on LinkedIn. And I'll usually takes me about a week, but I try to get back to everyone who hits me up on there.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much, Mike. It was so good to have you. And I hope you come back again.
Thanks, Manuj. A lot of fun.